Additionally, Scott Pfister and Kayla Smith were not at any time living together as husband and wife. Defendant has entered a not guilty plea.
Thank you. At this time, the attorneys will have an opportunity to make opening statements. In doing so, they may explain to you what they believe are the issues in the case and what they expect the evidence will show. The statements, which they now make, and the arguments they will later make after all of the evidence has been received, is not evidence and may not be considered by you as evidence. Also, any statements that they may make about the law is not to be considered by you as the law of the case. Since evidence often comes piecemeal and out of chronological or logical sequence in the trial of a lawsuit, the statements of counsel are merely to put the facts in perspective. They are intended to give you a thumbnail sketch of the case and outline the evidence to better aid you in understanding the issues and the evidence. Therefore, please give them your attention. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, the court, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, defendant Scott Pfister, approximately 10 years ago, took advantage of the relationship that he had fostered with his niece, Kayla Smith. Two witnesses. The state has two witnesses. Kayla Smith, the alleged victim, Detective Brian Arrett, Sac County Sheriff's Office. Kayla Smith will testify that beginning in 2005, defendant, her uncle, somebody she trusted, somebody she looked up to, performed a sex act on her. And not just once, but up to anywhere between 10 to 15 times in 2005 and 2006 timeframe alone when Kayla was 15. She was 15 years old. He took advantage of that relationship that we have with our family members, our nieces, our nephews, our aunts, our uncles, and the access that we have. He did that for his own purposes, at his own designated time. He took the innocence of a 15-year-old. And Kayla Smith's going to testify in detail, as much as she can provide. The defendant took his hand on multiple occasions, stuck it down her pants, and touched her vagina. Inserted his finger into her vagina. Detective Arrett, he'll testify that following these allegations, he interviewed defendant. And in fact, you're going to see a video recording from defendant's interview. Defendant is approached. Defendant's told there's allegations. Kayla Smith made allegations. Defendant's response: it was an accident. It must have been when I was accidentally tickling her thighs. It must have been when I was accidentally tickling up under her shirt. This is his own words. You're going to be able to see this in the video recording. He never, during the interview, flat out denies. He gives every reason in the world how Kayla Smith, age 15, could have mistaken what he said, what he had done. Defendant even admits to cuddling with his niece, Kayla Smith. Cuddling in a boat. After the state's presented its evidence, got one question to answer. Is Kayla Smith, is her version of events credible? And is her version of events corroborated with statements and other evidence that defendant provided Detective Barrett? And after that, I'm going to ask you to go back and make your decision and find defendant guilty of the crime charged. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schulten?
Thank you, Your Honor, Mr. Smith. It is so easy to charge sexual abuse because immediately everybody goes, ugh, and starts running around assuming number one, well, if anyone would say that somebody did that to them, obviously it must have happened. Again, you know, this really is, Mr. Smith brought it up earlier, this really is a he said, she said case. He says Scott doesn't deny, he does. He's entered a not guilty plea. He will deny it. He will deny it on the stand in front of you. That what she says happened, happened. At least in all of the way that she says it happened. What he didn't tell you about the whole scenario and about everything she says is that in every instance where she is alleging that there was some type of abuse, they were not alone. In every instance where she is alleging abuse, the entire family was gathered around. And it was not in the dark, and it was not in a hidden away place. It was in the living room of the home. It was in a boat when they were fishing or hunting. It was on a deer hunting expedition when they were all together. That's what her testimony is, for that matter. Somehow or another, he managed to do this in the living room with the lights on, with all these people gathered around, all family members talking, chatting, probably snacking. And she gets sexually abused in that scenario. That's a consideration. That's something beyond he said, she said. Our evidence will consist of testimony, probably pretty brief testimony from everybody. Scott's wife, Christy Pfister, will testify. You know, they've been married for a long time, had kids have grown up. She works, Scott works. They have a house in Lytton where they live. And they became sort of the center of the family, a more extended family, her sisters mainly, who would come for Christmas, Easter, once a month really, at least, just for family get-togethers. And, you know, Kayla's part of the family, she'd come along too. And Christy was there, with her husband, and her family, and her boy. None of this happened, she'll say. None of this happened. It couldn't possibly have happened. We were all there. Then Scott's two sons will testify. Yes, they were at all these family gatherings too, around the television, watching TV, or just sitting and talking in the living room when Kayla is saying that Scott was touching her inappropriately. And there was, no, that's not the way it was. Kayla was constantly bothering my dad. She was constantly coming up to him and clinging on him, to the point where if someone else were sitting by him on a couch, she would go and shove them aside so that she could sit by Scott. And I guess the family just sort of thought this was sort of a funny thing that was going on with her. The boys went duck hunting with their dad and other relatives, uncles, cousins, and Kayla, the only girl in the whole clan that wanted to go duck hunting. And she wanted to go duck hunting because she wanted to be close to Scott. She liked duck hunting, she will tell you. She and Scott would go duck hunting together. Well, except the Scott's boys were always there. And she'll say, well, no, they went off alone. Well, she'll say, no, not that we ever remember. That's not the way duck hunting works. And they'll explain exactly what their days were like duck hunting. They went deer hunting. Deer hunting was a little bit different thing because they weren't in a boat. When they went duck hunting, they were in a boat, and they would sleep in the boat at night. 5, 6 people in a flat-bottom John boat. And supposedly, with all these people crowded around, Scott was having some type of sexual dalliance with his, by law, niece. Again, not alone. Again, doesn't make any sense. Scott's mother, Karen Silling, will testify. Yeah, well, as a mother, of course, she's going to testify in favor of her son. She'll say she doesn't know much about what she saw, but, you know, she was over there. She didn't ever see anything. She was over there a lot. She didn't go duck hunting. She didn't go deer hunting. Again, Kayla was the only female that wanted to go duck hunting and deer hunting. And, you know, she'll just say that by all appearances, Kayla had this huge big crush on Scott. And she just would not leave him alone. And was constantly crawling all over him. And then something happened out of the blue all of a sudden. She turns on him and makes these allegations. You know, Scott, like I said, will testify briefly that there's nothing to testify to. That, yeah, he was aware that he and Kayla had developed a close relationship, that he knew that he was a particular favorite of hers. He knew that whenever there was a problem, she would call him up or ask him to come rescue her from some situation or another. And that in all those times, there was maybe some hugging, you know. Maybe some of you have hugged your nephew or niece. I don't know. It's not too unusual. His mother will testify to something else, and so will his wife, though. That the family dynamics was very active. That these teenage boys, as well as the girls, were very physical, that they would wrestle around, horseplay in the house, tickle, and that the adults would even join in on that kind of activity. This is just what they did. So yeah, there was a lot of physical touching going on, but none of it was sexual. These are just people horsing around. It's the way they do it. Some families, they don't act like that. Some families do. But ultimately, when you get down to it, the proof is just going to be Kayla said that this happened, and Scott says it didn't. But all these other people are going to say, but I don't see how it could have. And it's based on that evidence that we're going to ask you to return your verdict. Thank you.
Thank you.